Kenny, thank you so much for joining us for our podcast. I'm Dewald and Louise, and we are very interested to hear how things are going with Bloom Fresh. So I think for the people that don't know, please give us just who you are, where you're from, and a little bit of a quick background.
Yeah, so Kenny Avery, I'm from the United States. I have spent 33 years in and around agriculture in a number of different roles and companies. I spent 6 years leading the vegetable seed business for Monsanto on a global scale. And while vegetable seed is not the same as grapes or cherries, there's a lot of the same people and a lot of the same places you're involved with. And then I came into this organization, to Bloom, back in April of this current year. And then we finalized the combination and creation of Bloom on August the 11th of this year is when we finally closed the transaction. So.
And how has that been? How's the interest in the industry and the feedback that you've gotten been so far because of that?
Well, I think anytime you take two breeding companies and put them together, I think it creates a lot of questions from our grower and licensees, which ultimately is our most important customer.
Yes.
Questions about how we're going to run the businesses, what value for them is created by taking two competitors and putting them together. And I think what we've been doing is a consistent reach out to the growers and licensees over the last 2 years, because this took 2 years to get done.
It's been coming a while.
It took a while. So we had a lot of time to communicate. But the investment thesis for putting these two companies together was to be able to take the incredible genetics of both companies and breeding programs, put them together, and come out with something that's new and different over the long term that adds value to everybody. Because my goal is to double grape consumption around the world the next 10 years. And
that's a big goal.
That's a big number, right? It's a big goal. As an industry, it sounds like a big goal, but basically grape consumption has been roughly flat to growing 1% a year, right? And you take other segments of the fruit industry, and they're growing at 5, 6, 7, 7%. And we know that through research, the one thing that consumers have told us, both in the U.S. and Europe, is that what they want is a consistent and high quality eating experience, right? And we know that if consumers have a bad eating experience with grapes, they are out of the market anywhere from 4 weeks to 8 weeks, depending on which study you're looking at. So I kind of just call it 6 weeks, right? So if you think about what we can do from the standpoint and multiple dimensions about how we can increase consumption, as a breeder, we play a role, not the only role. We play a role in a very sophisticated chain of events that have to happen, starting with the grower and then all the way through to the retail experience that's presented to that consumer. But we're focused on creating consistent quality grapes from a breeding level that are easier to grow from an agronomic standpoint, and that give us the opportunity to have that consistent eating experience ultimately for the consumer. Secondly, we're focused obviously on the family of flavors that we have with IFG, and then on the SNFL. So now as Bloom, we have the family of flavors, and really that's about having the consumer understand what they're purchasing, right? The color of the grape skin has nothing to do with the flavor of the grape, right?
Yes.
But consumers think that, right? And I would tell you, before I got in the grape industry 8 months ago, my preference was always red grapes, right? I don't know why.
Well, you purchase with your eyes first.
Yeah.
When you see it, you can't taste it, but you can see it. So you will look at it and make a decision based on that, because as you say, you always just like red grapes. So you need people to eat these, to taste the different flavors. You need to get them out there.
Exactly. And ideally, long term, I would love, when we started to experiment and discuss this, I like for grapes to be labeled based on the flavor content. Whether it's a tropical or whether it's toffee like the Cotton Canyons, or Muscat or Labrusca, whatever this flavor experience, and some of those words resonate with the consumer, some won't. So we've got to make sure that the flavoring, you buy a pack of gum, and if it says mint on it,
Yes.
you expect it to taste like minty, right? If you buy, what we also know from consumers is they go into a retail store, they buy grapes, they like them, they come back next week or 2 weeks later, and it's not the same grape. It looks like the same grape, but it's not the same grape.
Yeah.
In general.
So, a question: you came into the grape industry 8 months ago,
Yeah.
and like you just said, you bought red grapes because that is what you bought. So, what has been your experience now, getting to know all these flavors, things that you might not have known about before?
Yeah.
How was it for you?
Well, I think, the when I was in Spain at the fruit attraction event in
Yes,
Spain,
fruit
right? There was a slide that was put up there that said of all the total grapes sold in the world, the flavors represented 1.1%. So the flavored profile grapes, right? But most everywhere I go in the world, people have heard of cotton candy grapes. Right? It's a universal, and it's an important variety for us as a company. But consumers recognize that name more than they recognize almost any other grape.
It is because they kind of expect what they can taste.
Exactly, they can see it, right? You can visualize. You know what cotton candy tastes like, and therefore, if the grape tastes similar to that experience, then that's what your expectation is. So I guess my answer to your question: one, I had no idea the extensive amount of work that was going on flavors, right? Because as a consumer, I just didn't know. And two, I didn't have an appreciation of the difficulty of creating those flavors and the subtle nuances of exactly when you harvest. If the brick level is not at the right level at harvest, then you're not going to have the same taste experience, etc. And so as I tell people, the grape industry is extraordinarily simple if you're a consumer, right? You just see grapes on a shelf and you buy them. You don't, seedless or seeded. There's not a whole lot of seeded left on the table anymore. They have no idea the complexity that a farmer, a grower goes through and the risk that a grower goes through. Whether it's today we're dealing with El Nino in Peru and the impacts of what that's going to do to the total market. That's going to reduce the amount of global availability. We're sitting in South Africa where you've been 3 years of course extraordinarily rain, and as I was touring yesterday in the north, I would say farmers are cautiously optimistic.
Yes.
Yeah.
This whole year has been, as everybody's just been cautiously optimistic. The citrus people have been quiet and they've done their thing. Nobody was making a fuss, and they actually did very well.
Yeah.
But it's like we don't know what's coming next year. So 2020, everybody did well because the world consumed fresh produce like it.
Yeah.
It was as if it was the cure for COVID, and then it kind of flattened out for a lot of people.
One of the big problems that was experienced was the logistical problem with all the clogging up and congestion of the trade routes and the massive cost to shipment. So farmers have taken a pretty hard knock in the last 2 years with that. I mean, and then we're talking about all the other climate stuff. So they were comparing grapes to Twinkies in one of the previous lectures. And so, the Twinkie factory just carries on Monday to Friday.
It doesn't get
January to December.
Rotten in 3
it
weeks'
doesn't
time.
make any difference. But the consumer, as you say, he goes into the store and he wants to get what he got last week. But, you can't explain to them, no, El Nino and all these other things. No, I just want the grapes.
Right.
But it's not made in a factory.
Exactly. And I think that's, as long as you grow things outdoors, which grapes are grown outdoors, it's always going to be raining somewhere you don't want it to be, and it's not raining somewhere else. It's too cold, it's too hot. That's just reality of, and so that's one of the things when I talk about what we're doing from a breeding perspective, right? We're trying that agronomic benefits of understanding climate change, right? And knowing grapes are being grown in different places and different environments than they've historically done. What can we do around disease resistance? And that is an incredible pillar of our breeding program. And we have grapes right now that are ready to commercialize that are fully resistant to downy and mildew and powdery mildew.
Wow.
And so what does that mean from a grower? Yeah. They're in our plots around the world right now. So what does that mean for a grower? Where a grower is I'm not going to use the right word. is extremely worried constantly about the impact of downy and powdery mildew, right? And so therefore they spray to make sure
Preventative.
to prevent it, right? And so you think about a peace of mind, number one, to a grower if you have something that's resistant, and then number two, there's an economic benefit because they're not going to be spraying much,
and an environmental benefit.
There is an environmental benefit as well, but from a grower perspective, because you get all of those, because growers are the number one. I don't care whether you're growing grapes or whether you're growing corn, maize. The number one growers thing that they focus on is the land, right? Because the land is they're the early adopters of sustainability, right? They've been working on sustainability for a long, long time. They're passionate about it, right? Because that's their number one asset is that land.
And that's what the consumer don't see. They don't realize that.
Right. Well, I think, and that's part of, I'll finish the discussion here, but we've got to be better at educating consumers about what that eating experience is going to be, what it takes to get food on the plate, right? Most consumers just don't understand because they haven't taken the time to learn, or they haven't grown up in a farming community. 100 years ago, everybody knew a farmer.
Yes.
Right? Today, you don't know a lot of farmers. We know a lot of farmers because we hang out with farmers, right? Yes. But if you don't farm, you live in a city, and you just walk into a retail location and you expect there to be grapes on the table.
So when we were in California last year, we were in Los Angeles, and Bakersfield is 2.5 hours further. You ask somebody in Los Angeles, do you know what's going on in Bakersfield? And this is,
where's that?
It's like a whole different world. Right?
Yes, and it's literally a mountain between them.
And what our previous speaker coined a wonderful phrase. He says, and we are subject to the tyranny of the clueless.
Yeah, well, I think my philosophy, as a company, we have a couple of philosophies, but my personal philosophy is number one: the truth always works, right? Yeah. And the second is never be a victim, always be a victor. And so, I would say consumers don't understand because we haven't taken the time to educate them. Now, there's going to be some that don't want to learn, right? Or there may be a lot that don't want to learn, right? But we have to continue to educate and continue to delight that consumer from a taste and an experience. And that's why we think about the family of flavors. My vision is that I want to be able to walk into a retailer and, there's a Woolworths right across the street here where we are today. Walk into that Woolworths and there's a bin that says tropical and there's reds and greens and whites in there. You pick the color you like, but that's the taste. That's the taste you're going to experience, or whatever that is. So therefore,
irrespective of what breeding house they come from,
right?
That makes sense.
That no matter what you label based on flavor, and the consumer based on as you pointed out earlier, you based on that color experience, whatever you like from that, or size, because obviously their grapes are different sizes, etc. So we're very focused on the flavors. We're very focused on the consumer experience. The disease resistance, we think, is an incredible opportunity for the industry, but also a very incredible opportunity for our licensees and growers. And then the last piece that we're really focused on, we have a variety. We have a grape that's coming out that's a cross between a wine grape and a table grape.
Okay.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes, and it's one of the first one, the only one that I know about. And we'll be launching that. We showed it in Murcia, Spain, at our field day in August of this year for the first time. So it's out there, and the unique benefits of it is it has anywhere from 1 to 1.5 to 2 times the antioxidant level of blueberries.
Wow.
So everybody knows blueberries.
Yes.
Right? Everybody knows how the blueberries are a superfood because of the level of antioxidants. I had a blueberry muffin this morning. I like blueberry muffins. I don't eat blueberries fresh, right? That's my personal preference, but I just don't like the experience. But I like grapes. I like grapes before I got into the grape industry. But what this will do from a consumer perspective, it's something new to talk about. Yes. It's something new to expose them to grapes. I think it'll help pull other grapes along because and it's a I don't want to call it a superfood yet, but I mean we know through research that we've done through third parties, not our research, but through third parties, we know that the antioxidant levels, and we know how it ranks against a number of other fruits, not just blueberries, but blueberries tends to be the number one leader. So we'll be launching that. I don't know, my goal is for it to sit right next to blueberries in a different package type, to get the consumer excited. We had another Another one of our licensees has been experimenting with frozen grapes.
Okay.
And just to give you the scale, it blows my mind in this age of technology and sitting here having a discussion on a podcast. But they froze cotton candy grapes.
Yeah.
They did a experiment. It was supposed to be a 10-day trial at a retailer in the United States. In 2.5 days, they were completely sold out of what was supposed to be for 10-day supply. Oh. They had 81.5 million views on TikTok.
Wow. And
81.5 million views on TikTok.
Phenomenal. And the good thing about that is, especially like in a country like South Africa where labor is relatively cheap, is that there's a lot of cut out grapes, smaller berries, things like that gets cut out and discarded and goes to winery and gets distilled into South Africa's favorite drink, brandy. But now that can be utilized.
It's another alternative for the grape itself. And for me, it's, everything's got multiple dimensions. But for me, I try to keep it simple because I'm not the smartest guy in the world. So for me, it's another thing for the consumer to think about grapes, right? So whether it's the red berry that I talked about with the antioxidants or a frozen grape. I mean, people have been eating frozen grapes. We didn't invent the concept of it. This retailer or licensee didn't. What they did was they invented the concept of putting cotton candy grapes, freezing them. They do a flash freeze process where it freezes from the inside out of the grape versus if you put
it doesn't burst the skin.
Yeah, and so it doesn't burst the skin. I've had them. They were very good. I was pleasant.
Kids will love them. Yeah. Kids will love them.
Kids love them. So, as I said, I started off with the goal is to double consumption, right? There's multiple dimensions and avenues to double consumption, and we got to do our part from a commitment standpoint, from a business perspective to continue to innovate around varieties, but then also to help that discussion, be a part of that discussion from a consumer standpoint as we continue to work towards it.
And Bloom, have you guys, if you may share, have you looked at strategies to educate the consumer going forward? Like possibly TikTok, like what this licensee did?
Yes, we are looking at that. We've seen some licensees that do their own marketing in areas where they've done promotions, done social media promotions where consumption in a pocket has gone up 200% over a 3-week period. And so we know that the other research says historically that grapes are not on your grocery list.
Yeah.
Right? They're more of an impulse buy. If you see them now, for me, they're on my grocery list. My wife told me you got to quit buying so many grapes. I was like,
yeah.
But luckily now you'll probably get given quite a few boxes everywhere you go.
Yes.
I said, well, look, I'm doing market research all the time, right? I look at the grapes, not just ours, but the whole industry's, because that's the consumer doesn't necessarily know Bloom Fresh.
Yes.
Right? They may know cotton candy, but they don't know Bloom Fresh. Coca-Cola. Right.
Yes.
So if you buy Coca-Cola and it's bad, you know who to call, right?
Yes.
You don't necessarily know who or what that experience is. The grapes just show up. It's like almost, it's better than oranges because, on the grapes you got a clamshell and you got some information on the back of it or a bag or whatever it may be. So I think that as we think about the, us and Bloom and our role, in moving forward with this, we're going to have to help assist that. So we've been doing market research quite a bit over the last number of years about understanding consumer preference, understanding how to communicate with consumers. Obviously, we've got incredible retail partners around the globe. Yes. They're very interested in produce because produce pulls consumers into the store, right? I mean, a bag of potato chips does not pull people into the store because you can buy a bag of potato chips anywhere.
Yes.
Right? But quality fresh produce, and in our case, quality fresh fruit, is something that consumers have said they will go past 1 or 2 stores to get to a store that they trust or that they actually like.
And then they will buy the bread and the milk and the
Yes.
And the crisps and all the other stuff there.
Exactly. So we know that retail partners are hungry to continue to support this, this discussion. So we're going to be working with them because again, and then we're going to do everything we can from a product creation standpoint to help promote that. So I think it really starts with us obviously in the middle is the grower and the marketers and the licensees and what that looks like. So again, that's why I say it's a full circle of people that's going to be.
Sounds very exciting.
It sounds extremely exciting. And, there are two things you mentioned, which I think youngsters are very, very interested in nutrition. And I mean, we all know that the buzzword of superfoods. If you can get grapes into that category, because blueberries are there, but if you're producing grapes that have got the same nutritional values as blueberries, why shouldn't you be there? And you deserve a place at that table for the grape sector. And the other thing that I find interesting is that freezing grapes, no one's ever thought of doing that. And previously, when you had seeded grapes, no one thought, well, then, the seed is a problem if you're freezing it. But now, seedlessness, you can do that. And you can eat it like, you can eat them like frozen, use them like frozen.
I've seen videos where people say, freeze your grapes and put it in your wine. It doesn't dilute the wine like a block of ice would.
Right. Yeah.
And then you have something to chew on, and it's the same.
Yeah. It's just...
That's very interesting.
And I mean, one of the things we hear, we've done some research on that, particularly with the red grape that I mentioned earlier. The level of sugar, right? So grapes are too sweet. 20 bricks grape is too sweet. With the antioxidant combination of the red grape, what we've learned through research is the way your body assimilates glucose, that a 20 bricks red grape with the antioxidants is the equivalent of a 12 bricks pineapple from a sugar absorption into your body. The way it works. Now, understand, I'm in the grape business. I'm not a medical doctor, so I can't explain to you the whole details of it.
Obviously, yes.
But we paid for the research. We're going to continue to build out that research because, again, that's another avenue of where grape consumption is, well, they're too sweet, or there's too much sugar in it. But you got to understand there's good sugar and bad sugar, and understand what's being absorbed into your body. So we're going to continue to do that research to help promote the grape category. And in the end, it's about grape consumption, because if grape consumption doubles, if it only increases 75%, we still made everybody wins.
Well, Dr. David Hughes showed, I think grapes makes up 2% of the shopping list.
Very small amount.
So to take it to 4%, it's you've only got to raise it by another 2%. You need to steal 2% market share from the grocery basket, and that is, in the grand scheme of things, not a lot, but it's still a mammoth task.
Yeah.
But something I wanted to mention, that is, when you're freezing grapes, you are taking them from a perishable product to something which is, it's frozen, so it's still perishable, but it can last a lot longer. It can last months. And previously in our country, it's actually a dying industry, is the canning industry. Because there were a lot of grape people that delivered to canning factories, and the grapes would obviously then be put into a sweet syrup. So to move away from that sugar, the can you can sit on your shelf, but now you can buy it and it can sit in the deep freeze. You don't have to eat it. It's no longer perishable in the true sense of the word.
Right.
So you suddenly you're moving into a different category.
Yeah, it's a new category. It's an opportunity for growers to manage their crops different for ones that are going to go to frozen in the end. So, and we think it's a unique opportunity. Obviously, it's a small experiment right now.
Yes.
But it's another thing that I think as we continue to experiment, it gets people talking about grapes.
And I could see an opportunity there for moving into recipes for baking if it's frozen. Like people use frozen blueberries and for baking. If you could incorporate that into that. I heard a story during COVID that raisins went from not very big on the shopping list to going through the roof because people were looking for healthy, sweet snacks. So and everybody was baking because they were at home. Right. So suddenly something which was just that might get into the shopping basket, suddenly it was there in a big way. So if you're making grapes available to people in a different way that they've never considered, what did you say about TikTok?
81.5 million people.
So that's a very clever idea.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so I think let's wrap this up. So we do the previous guest, and we don't always ask in chronological order, gives a question for the next guest.
Okay.
And it's nice to tie them all together. You're going to give us a question afterwards as well. So the question is, between the time you entered your profession, and it doesn't have to be Bloom, it can before. Between the time you entered your profession, what has been the skill that has meant the most to you, or that's benefited you the most, that you never thought you were going to need?
I would say I started my career in public accounting. So I'm an accountant by trade. I have a master's in accounting. And I took a class in college called Small Group Communications, where you understood the dynamics of a boardroom, but you also learned how to communicate your thoughts. It wasn't just speech. It was, I never realized when I took that class in college that I would be using it the rest of my life. Public speaking, the amount of public speaking I've done, I never envisioned that when I was starting out my career. And the amount of boardrooms and meetings that I've sat in and understanding the dynamics of people, right? I use that class a lot more than I've ever used botany. And although I use botany a lot these days, right? But there's a lot of classes I took that in college that are not necessarily there. But that's be the one skill that I didn't think I needed when I started, but that it certainly is.
Interesting, and one can really imagine that because communication is so important, and the nuances and reading the room and knowing how to communicate properly.
And it's something that a lot of people will overlook, because if you say to any kid leaving school now, take this class, because you never know where you're going to be in 30 years' time. And they might say, well, I'm never going to speak in front of people.
They wouldn't see the value.
Yes, they wouldn't see the value, but it's...
Yeah. Well, I think that's the whole, I spoke at a university a couple of years ago, and I had the question, almost the same question, just a different wording. And I told them, I said, look, you're going to spend the rest of your life communicating, and you're either going to be good at it or bad at it. And I said, I people that are successful when they can communicate their ideas. There's a lot of great people that have great ideas, but if they can't communicate it and create buy-in, then you're not going to be as successful as you could be. And I told them, I said, I hate PowerPoint, because PowerPoint has dumbed down people's ability to communicate. Yes. It's a powerful tool for graphs and pictures and all those things, but people that rely on it to communicate their message, to me, it becomes ineffective. So,
Kenny, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for spending time with us and chatting to us. Yeah. And the very best of luck at the helm of a very exciting new company. And we wish you and Bloomfresh every success into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much.